Welcome, everybody. My name is Julio Tino. I'm the Dean of McCormick. I have said in the past that the function of a leader, and the Dean is supposed to be a leader, is to provide conditions for successful emergence. Okay? The beauty of that, I think this is true, but the beauty of this kind of philosophy is that you can take credit for any good thing that happens under your watch, okay? And one of the good things that happened under my watch is that without people getting instructions as to what to do, sometimes they assemble them and tackle issues that are important to us. And Jill Wilson and Marita Poll have tackled one of those issues, which is mental health, okay? So McCormick, I have said many, many times, is an organization in which we have two inputs, human capital and money resources, and we produce ideas and better people. And it's really super important for us, especially when the system is so selective that we protect our human capital, okay? And by human capital, it's everything, students, faculty, staff, but the one that we are talking today mostly is students. We are living in a world in which if you're a student in engineering, you have to put your head down and work on courses that require all your attention, and probably you can shield yourself all perturbations and really try to do well on that. And maybe you can close all the news, because the news, every time that you open something here, news is something really bad. And you have to feel for people who are isolated, hear constantly bad news. And in many cases, if you are the first person in your family to go to the university, you don't have much advice to rely on. So it's super, super important that we understand the issues, we see the resources. And even though I would like to have everybody attending this talk, I think that what I would like to count is on people who hear this to spread the news that this is an important issue and kind of tell everybody what Jill and Marita are doing. With that as a way of introduction, I give the floor to Jill, who I think will start the presentation. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Julio. As Julio said, we're here to talk today about our support of student mental health by providing training for faculty and staff in addressing these issues. I'd like to start with a little bit of context. The National College Health Assessment is a nationally recognized research survey that covers a wide range of health issues, including mental health, and it includes both undergraduate and graduate students. The NCHA, the health assessment given in the spring of 2019, revealed that 33% of college students report being diagnosed with or treated for a mental health condition in the past year, with anxiety and depression being the most common of those diagnoses. And you'll see here that anxiety is an issue or in terms of treatment or identification for nearly 1 in 4 students, with depression being problematic for 1 in 5. And yet 2/3 of students with anxiety or depression don't seek treatment. The survey also revealed that at some point in the previous year, 71% of students felt very sad, 66% felt lonely or overwhelming anxiety, and 13% had serious thoughts of suicide. The Enrolled Student Survey gathers information from undergraduates to assist in evaluating the student experience, and it's used at institutions nationwide, asking students to indicate how frequently they experience a range of feelings and behaviors. The graph that you see here represents responses only from Northwestern students in 2019, with yellow and red indicating respectively answers of often or very often. And what you see here is that 73% of students reporting often or very often feeling overwhelmed, 43% feeling very sad often or very often, And then 24% reported feeling depressed, often or very often, to the point that it was difficult to function. Of course, all of this data comes from pre-COVID times, and we all have seen, both personally and in our students, the impacts that the conditions of the pandemic and the onset of isolation have instituted on all of us. So more recent surveys were conducted of college students in the fall of 2020 by both College Pulse and Active Minds. The College Pulse survey reported that more than half of students were somewhat anxious about the pandemic. And even more dramatically, more than 20% of them reported constant anxiety. 61% are concerned about their mental health. The Active Minds survey showed that students in overwhelming proportions reported feeling stress or anxiety, loneliness, isolation, disappointment, and sadness. And I think we all have experienced how that's impacted our productivity and our ability to synthesize new information. And if we put ourselves in the shoes of our students and think about their attempts to learn and manage home circumstances and continue towards their success, that this is really impactful for them. Because of our frequent and regular interactions with students, faculty and staff are especially well positioned to observe signs of distress or crisis in our students. And yet we overwhelmingly feel inadequately prepared. 58% of us don't feel prepared to recognize when a student is exhibiting signs of distress. 2/3 of us don't feel prepared to approach at-risk students to discuss our concerns, even when we observe these signs. And almost half of us feel underprepared to recommend mental health support services to students. Yet, 95% of us say that it's part of our role to connect students to support services. We agree that this is part of our jobs and part of our duty to students, our duty of care, but we feel so ill-equipped. So if we step back and look at the big picture presented here, we know that student mental wellness influences academic, personal, and professional wellness, and even success. Yet this data we've seen indicates that mental wellness is in jeopardy. In my experience, and I suspect this is the same for many of you in attendance today, mental health concerns often arise in the context of academic conversations with faculty and staff. I know that in my experience, these issues have often come up in discussing accommodations for coursework or struggles to understand and focus enough to really internalize the course content. Faculty and staff want to help. We want to be there for our students, but because we have no prior training and we feel so ill-equipped, we fear doing harm. And this definitely reflects my own experience over 20 years at the academy, but at two very different institutions. So combining my experience with Marita Poll's experience in student affairs and supporting students in crisis, we developed the Responding to Students in Distress workshop to help prepare faculty to better support students in distress and crisis. This is a 90-minute workshop designed to educate faculty in available Northwestern supports and to increase comfort, showing them how they can best respond when they encounter a student in crisis. The first offering was highly attended. We had nearly 60 faculty and staff in attendance, with many more expressing interest. And based on the level of interest in that program and the expressed desire of many to dive a little deeper, Marita developed the Mental Health Allies program, which is a 4.5-hour training program designed to empower faculty and staff to identify students in distress and crisis, to respond to them, to engage with them, and to refer them to appropriate campus resources. And these programs were supported by funding from the Murphy Society and the Northwestern alumni. These programs gained enough interest campus-wide that the Provost's office ultimately offered the Responding to Students in Distress workshop in the winter quarter to roughly 150 faculty and staff based on this model that we developed. Marita is now going to tell us about these two programs in more detail.
Thanks, Jill. So as Jill mentioned, the Responding to Students in Distress program was first offered in the spring of 2019. And Jill and I worked with our colleagues from the Office of Undergraduate Engineering, as well as CAPS and the Dean of Students Office, to develop this program and then also to present this program. We wanted to be able to illustrate and illuminate how students are supported through each one of those offices. And then we also wanted to make sure that faculty and staff really understood when and how to reach out to each one of those individual offices to support students. So the Responding to Students in Distress program really helps faculty and staff by making that connection to those offices that I mentioned, undergraduate engineering, as well as graduate students through engineering, the Office of Engineering, and then also making sure that the faculty and staff understand exactly when to contact the Dean of Students office, as well as when to walk a student to CAPS. Is a situation so distressing that it's immediately necessary to take a student over to CAPS or virtually walk them to CAPS in our current situation? Then also just really the opportunity to make sure that faculty and staff really understand all of the details that go into supporting our students through CAPS, the Dean of Students office, and undergraduate engineering as well. So the Mental Health Ally program, as Jill mentioned, was first offered in the fall, actually in December of 2019. And it was a program that was developed in response to interest, but then also we wanted to be able to provide an opportunity for faculty and staff who were interested in learning more and supporting students at a higher level. So as Jill mentioned, instead of the 1.5 hour training for the Responding to Students in Distress, this is a 4.5-hour program that really dives deep into how to support students, when to refer students, and when to engage students in conversation about their mental health. So our learning outcomes for the Mental Health Ally program include, again, knowing how to identify a student in distress or crisis, being able to distinguish between those two. Also, we want our mental health allies to be comfortable reaching out to students, engaging students around conversations related to mental health. And then we want, again, as same with the Responding to Students in Distress, we want members of our community to really understand when and exactly how to refer students for support. And lastly, we want our mental health allies to be able to connect with campus resources and also national resources to support students in their mental health. The Mental Health Ally program, as mentioned before, really provides our faculty and staff with those resources to engage in our 3-step process, which is to respond to students when we identify that there is an issue, there's a concern, to engage students in a conversation, to listen, to open the door, to allow students to walk through that door and share with us what's happening with them, and then referring students to campus resources. We definitely want our mental health allies also to be acting as resources for colleagues, because we know that not everyone will have the time to put into being a mental health ally. Not everyone will want to engage in a 4.5-hour training program. So we want our mental health allies to be a resource for colleagues as well. The program is ongoing. We are going to be entering our 3rd year next year. We have currently 60 mental health allies identified and trained in McCormick. We want our mental health allies to be engaged with our community in reducing the stigma associated with mental health challenges. And then we want everyone within McCormick to really recognize and encourage through this program help-seeking behavior on the part of our students and to normalize that. So how will we know who is a mental health ally of those 60 wonderful people that have been trained in the program thus far? Well, when we return to campus, we'll see laptop stickers. We have these laptop stickers that are ready to go for our mental health allies to self-identify themselves. We have lapel pins that our MHAs will wear around campus. Door placards will be available. So you'll see this popping up as we return to campus. For now, we're identifying ourselves through this little placard or little sticker on the bottom of our email signatures. And those of you who have communicated with Jill and I have seen that at the bottom of our email. So one of the last things I want to just mention here is that we are in for the Mental Health Ally program, we are not positioning ourselves as counselors, right? You'll see here, faculty and staff trained to be MHAs are not counselors. We're a conduit. We really consider our MHAs to be a conduit to connect students more speedily, and to make sure that our students are connected well and in a timely fashion to support services on campus. We want to be able to extend our community of care. We know that the Dean of Students Office is charged with supporting students. We know that the Office of Undergraduate Engineering, same, and we know that CAPS is doing that work as well. We want to be able to provide a caring community for our students within McCormick, and certainly reducing the stigma around mental health issues is an important part of our work. And lastly, we want to make sure that our mental health allies are doing the work and the three-step process of recognizing when students are in distress and crisis, engaging students, having those conversations that open students up, and then referring those students appropriately.
Thank you, Marita. I'm going to stop my screen share now and encourage everyone, if you have questions, to put those in the chat or in the Q&A box, and we'll be answering those as they come in. Marita, while we're waiting for questions, maybe you could tell us a little bit about some of the resources that you use to develop Mental Health Allies program. What does the syllabus, if you will, look like for that?
Absolutely. So we know that the JED Foundation is a national organization that provides resources for campuses, and we are a JED campus. We're identified as a JED campus, so we have the resources available to us that are provided by the JED Foundation, and that's a national organization that provides resources to campuses, college campuses, and now is moving into providing support services around mental health issues for high schools as well. So we definitely utilize their resources. And Active Minds is another national organization that was started to prevent suicide in college students. And we also used their resources that are available through Active Minds.
Those are fantastic. And I'll put some of those links in the chat momentarily. We do have a question that came in. Are you aware of other schools at Northwestern that have similar programs?
We have shared with our colleagues through the provost office, as Jill mentioned, about them. We've shared about the Mental Health Ally program, and we are not aware currently of other colleges or other schools that have the same program. We have offered up the use of this program to be changed and adapted for all of the different schools. We want to be able to share this program with as many schools and at Northwestern as possible. Certainly not something that we want to keep just in McCormick. We want to be able to share this so that other schools can benefit from it as well.
Thank you. We have a question, and maybe this is a question for Julio. Why isn't this training mandatory for faculty?
I think the things that work the best is when there is they emerge bottom up, and the culture of a place drives things rather than having to produce a blueprint that mandates something. This has to do with the philosophy of what I said at the beginning: provide the conditions for successful emergence. Okay, I didn't expect that industrial engineering this will emerge, but emerged what, 3-4 years ago. Well, and you had like 60 people in that conference. I think that this will be, in fact, probably don't need 100%. You need a critical mass of people who are what is needed to really capture these people who need attention. And I think that this has the potential, if not already has happened, to be part of the culture of McCormick. The idea that we are all a connected network, that we don't want to leave part of the network outside, and God forbid that we lose people from the network after we have worked so hard to make them part of us. So I do not know if making mandatory is a good idea, to tell you the truth. Let's see how this evolves. But my sense is that this is well on its way to become part of the culture of the place. And the culture of the place is, the definition of culture is, in my view, how things get done, okay? Or if you want a longer one, is how people do things without to have to look at a playbook. And I think this, by those two definitions, I think this will become part of the culture of McCormick. And if we are lucky, this will spread to other places as well.
Thank you, Julio. And I've been really encouraged by the number of faculty and staff who have reached out to us, even when they can't attend training. As Marita said, we've had a large number of people participate in this, but even those who couldn't reached out and said, I'm really sorry, I can't do this. When are you going to do it again? And so on that note, Marita, we have a couple of questions about when are these opportunities going to be available again, and how do we sign up?
Absolutely. So we will offer the program again next year, beginning in December. We will do a 90-minute training in December, a 90-minute training in January, and then in the spring, CAPS offers QPR training, which is suicide prevention training, and there will be a couple of different opportunities to attend at those sessions in the spring of next year. So please look for the announcement that will be distributed at the beginning of the fall quarter, and we'll welcome everyone who is interested for sure.
And I would say on the Responding to Students in Distress workshop, because the Provost's office has demonstrated some interest here, we're waiting to see what their interest is in continuing this before offering it again in McCormick, although I do think there's some value in offering it specifically for McCormick faculty and staff with McCormick resources, because each school handles these issues so differently. Marita, are there any thoughts about training students as mental health allies?
Yes, this is such a great question. We actually have not answered that question just yet, but certainly having worked many years in student affairs, I can certainly see the opportunity for students to be trained to be mental health allies moving forward. So it's definitely on the list of possibilities. We just haven't, in these first 2 years, we've really been focused on faculty and staff, but I can certainly see that as an opportunity moving forward.
And certainly COVID threw a wrench in our plans for continuing these trainings. So I'm glad we've been able to continue it this year remotely. I know that most of what we focused on in this presentation, at least, has been supporting undergraduate students. Can you talk a little bit about how Responding to Students in Distress and Mental Health Allies also aims to support graduate students?
Mm-hmm.
That's a question for me, Jill, yes?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And we know from the research that that graduate students are definitely challenged around these topics, certainly as much, if not more, than our undergraduate students. So we definitely have in our training focused on graduate students and continue to do that, and working with the Dean's office to make sure that we know exactly, as mental health allies, how to refer graduate students. And the Dean of Students has responded to many questions around supporting graduate students. And we know from the Dean of Students office that indeed we, for graduate students, will use them as a resource as well. And for CAPS, obviously, as well.
Thank you, Marita. It looks like we've answered all the questions submitted.
Well, I have one thing to add. It will be good to get a sense. I presume that if you are opening this to students, they will jump at the possibility. But maybe we have to devise a way of doing this in stages, do like a little pilot and then go big, rather than just going big in one shot. The thing that I wanted to ask you is, can you give us a sense, as kind of I'm being a participant in the training, of what elements the training involves? What are the topics and how much time? Give a kind of blurb of what it would be like to do the training.
So absolutely, the first 90-minute session is really focused on a lot of the data that we see, national data, and then we also unpack some Northwestern data around student mental health. So really sort of making the frame of exactly what it is that we're responding to and why it's so important, right? So some of the things that Jill mentioned in terms of faculty and staff reporting that they want to be able to assist, and just not knowing exactly how to do that, and certainly wanting to do no harm. So that's the first session. And then in addition to that, during the first session, we also break down into teams and we work through scenarios, right? Sort of the examples. What are some examples of what we've dealt with and how do we respond to that? And then we share that out. The second session is a little bit more detailed about exactly how, if you encounter a student who is in crisis, what do you do exactly? And we focus very much on the exact process, procedure, the phone number. If you don't get an answer to your call, then what do you do? So we're very specific in making sure that our MHAs have very detailed information about what to do. And then that's followed up by scenarios, again, in the second session. The last session, as I mentioned, is suicide prevention training that is offered specifically through CAPS, and that's a national program.
Have you considered, this has been a dream of mine in many ways. It's not case studies, but I presume if you build a program in which you have a student that shows up mimicking the signs of distress, and we have fabulous students in theater, you could use that to train people, and it may make even this more popular. Have you considered something like that?
We have not, Julio, but that is an excellent suggestion. And in fact, there's a program at the University of Michigan that does something similar. It's a different topic, but they do use actors to be able to run through scenarios. So great suggestion.
I can float the idea to my counterpart in School of Communications. I think he will jump at the idea. So I want to ask you something. This was very, very compact and nicely presented. So have you seen any changes due to COVID? Because now you can only help people that somehow approach you or are referred to you. And I know that there are people who are just languishing in there. They are not very connected with anything. Knock on wood, everything seems to be okay so far. But have you seen any visible changes due to COVID?
I mean, certainly in advising, I've encountered students who are dealing with extra issues as a result of COVID and additional stress, isolation. We've certainly heard from our counterparts in undergraduate engineering and in the Dean of Students office that the number of students in crisis or distress and the number of students they're interacting with has dramatically increased. Marita, do you want to add to that?
So I want to say that when we offered the training for the MHAs this year, we did focus on how do you virtually walk a student to CAPS? If the student is halfway across the world, what do you do? So we did respond to our current environment. We certainly can't ignore that. We wanted to provide the mental health allies with that new information given our current circumstances. So we did provide that. And I think we will continue to provide that moving forward because things have changed, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you both. This was great. We will have, after this, Ellen Warsaw presenting things from the student group side of things. I mean, students who are attached to groups it's a great way to be connected to us. And then Joe Holtrip will present this new program sort of managing yourself, which is path. So be on the lookout for the announcement of those two. And Jill and Marita, thank you so much for doing this. And thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you.
And thank you all of the attendees.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.